Okay, you're good. You're live.
I'm going to call to order tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee. Of the Committee of the Whole, sorry, for Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. Time is 4:05. I'm Laura McNally, Fifth Ward City Council person. I'm going to take roll call for tonight's meeting. Jennifer Ozinger, Rick Deek, Kyle Mizak, Mike Ray, Valencia Morrow, Anita Davis, Basha Adamczak, Julius Oliver, Samantha Turner, and Tito Brown. And up first in tonight's department budget reviews, we have the Finance and IT department, and I think Kyle is going to go through those numbers with us, and I will share my screen as soon as I get things loaded over here. But otherwise, you guys all have the documents. You'll just have to follow along yourself. So Kyle, do you want to tell us where you want to get started?
Yes. Hello, all through the chair. Thank you for all of you convening tonight to start the budget meeting process. I just want to first explain to you what the format is so that going forward over the next few weeks that you'll be using similar documents. So I thought I would kind of brief you tonight on what the document and how it is set up so that if there's any questions before we begin, I can answer them about the formatting and before I proceed with discussing finance. But what I've done for you is I have pulled together a document that shows what was actually expended last year by the department. Now, the need to remember that's why the asterisk is next to that calendar reference. These are not showing dollars that are encumbered. This is what was actually expended. So when you provide a budget, the budget covers expenditures and encumbrances. But if I were to add another column, this would be smaller. And remember, the encumbrances are going to be expended in 2021. Just like when you're looking at the 2020 expenditures, the budget that you approved covered just the 2020 budget expenditures, but the actuals will include 2019, but they were not measured against the budget because they were soft closed, just like we're doing in the current process right now. What was encumbered in 2020 will get spent in 2021 expended. But when it was applied against your budget, we were all in compliance if it was not in the red. So I'm showing you what was actually expended. And what that is what was spent from January 1 of 2020 through December 31st, plus anything that was from 2019 that we paid for in 2020. The next column is what we actually approved in the 2020 budget in March. This is not the reconciliation budget. This is the budget that you, in essence, approved when we reviewed what the forecast would be on revenues. And if everybody had utilized what you had made available to them in the budget, this is the level that you gave them the threshold that they could expend up to. And so now we're doing a comparison of what is in 2021's budget versus what you approved in 2020. And the far right-hand column is going to show you differences. And if it's in brackets, it means it's lower. And if it's not in red in brackets, it's higher. So that is the format that these documents are going to be provided to you. And we're looking at it at the division level. I provided you 2 weeks ago, when we looked at all the general government funds, I provided you with the roll-ups. So the general fund, when we go through all the general fund divisions, what you have already in your possession for the general government general fund is the roll-up of all those divisions. Similar when we talk about police, similar when we talk about fire, street, park, and 911. Remember, we have not shared with you yet the enterprise funds. We will be doing that in the near future. But I just wanted you to appreciate what you had in front of you that first meeting and what we're going to talk about now. Now we're talking about all the divisions and they would roll up to, because none of the numbers have changed. I'm not changing any of these until after we have recommendations, but ultimately what you're starting with is the document that was for the total of the fund, This is all those numbers that support, that roll up to that total. Are there any questions with regards to the formatting and how we're going to use these documents? Given that there are none, let's proceed. So what you have in front of you tonight for finance is two separate divisions that make up finance. You have the finance unit, and then you have the computer unit. So we're first going to address the finance unit and talk about what is in the operating budget and what is in the payroll and benefit component of the budget, and then what the differences are. And as you can see, as I had said to you, we are trying to provide to each department as much as possible what they received last year. And if they needed less than what they were given last year, and there was validated proof that we could potentially cut that line item, I have gone ahead and reduced it. However, if there was an area where they spent more and there was good reason for spending more, because some of this stuff I'm aware of, maybe it was one time, but there was other areas that I know it's going to be reoccurring, I have actually bumped up that line item. And I have shown you why, and if we need to, I could always do a little research and get back to you, or maybe even tonight, if I can look on the screen, maybe answer why, but that would show that there was a need for more. Part of that need for more is sometimes visible in what was spent last year. Now, be conscientious that last year doesn't have any of the encumbrances that still needed to be measured against the budget. But I'm trying to show you that in some areas the numbers exceed the budget. And so that's why we're actually increasing, because there's a need to increase in the current year. The bottom is all dependent upon what division we're looking at, is wages and benefits. Unless there is a change in headcount, wages are going to be higher because almost every union received a 1% increase in 2021. In addition, if there's no changes in employment and there's been no changes to somebody's makeup with regards to their health coverage, that is going to be higher because we have imposed a 10% increase because we're moving into self-covered insurance, and we want to make sure that we develop a sizable reserve and not go through our first year and not have enough set aside to pay our own bills. So that's why those two line items could be higher. In addition, if wages are higher, your pension and Medicare are going to be higher because they are tied proportionately to the increase in wages. The only thing that would negate that is if there was less overtime and less special pays, fringes, because a combination of wages, overtime, and special fringes is what you calculate your pension off. So those nuances will dictate sometimes what some of those line items in payroll and benefits, why they're changing. And if you have questions, I should be able to answer them. So by starting with finance, when you look at the operating budget, I believe that based on what we expended last year and based on where I could make some cuts, I believe we need about $4,500 more on the operating side. I believe on the equipment side that we need, and the reason that there is equipment in my budget, we still are purchasing some of the Microsoft upgrades on computers across certain departments. Instead of putting those numbers in the departments, I told Rick I was going to put it in finance. Finance will pay for some of those licenses that still have not been paid for. If you remember last year, you're going to see across all of the general fund divisions, they all had money in the equipment because we had to purchase software upgrades, and that was a good place to put it. So that way it wasn't commingled with operating supplies, which are used every year. So that is why it is still in finance, but I'm only using $3,000 because Rick thinks there's maybe a few, between less than a half dozen of licenses that still may be renewed. So I'm making sure that that is budgeted because we need to make sure that we move over to the more current Microsoft software base that we all have on our systems. When you get to payroll and benefits, there's a huge reduction. And that is when you turn the page and you look at positions that I shared with you. In the past, we were budgeting for a deputy finance director. We also had in our department a payroll coordinator and an accounting coordinator. Those positions are not currently going to be refilled this current calendar year. We have put in for a partial year, a purchasing agent, and we've staggered the budget amount of what it would be if it started around that timetable in the calendar year. So as you can see, we have a budget of $638,000 that last year on paper, when we presented it to you, was nearly $740,000. So we are, in essence, on paper, because of not filling and not putting the finance director's position on the budget, we are saving over $100,000 year over year when you compare the budget.
Okay, excuse me, Cal.
Yep.
I'm sorry, what two positions were those?
Oh, are you looking on the second page?
Yes, this
Okay,
one.
come down and see payroll coordinator and account coordinator.
Okay, just those two.
Yes, those two were filled last year, and we're not filling them for the we're not going to fill them this calendar year. We're going to work within the size of our department and accomplish what we need to accomplish by, and determining, can we do this going forward with two less people? Because one retired and one was fired because of a drug issue. So we chose not to fill those positions, and we're not budgeting for them. So those savings are falling to the bottom line compared to last year.
Okay, thank you.
Lauren, this is a question.
Oh, Julius?
Thank you, through the chair. So Kyle, you don't feel like you're going to need these positions moving forward, or just to be clear, you're going to take this year to study and see if you can work without two people?
Yes, we're going to make an attempt to see if we can do this work in-house and accomplish what we were doing with two less bodies. Yes, that's what in essence we're trying to do. Correct.
Okay,
Julius?
thank you.
Through the chair,
Samantha?
you have, so your payroll and your accounting coordinator are gone, but we're adding a purchasing agent. Is the salary equivalent to those, one of the other two positions that's leaving?
The two positions that were filled, they exceed the total of that. Right now, we have that total at 66,000. The two jobs that left, if I look at last year, just give me a minute. I have that report up, my payroll report that the budget was built on. Those two position salaries added up to $88,261.
Okay, so this, the purchasing agent, the partial 7.5 months is for 48. The annual salary is 66.
If we find somebody that would meet all of because it's going to, what we're putting out there when we go out and advertise is a gap. We don't know what we're going to be able to find. So it's going to be dependent upon one's ability, but we at least want to have the high end be at 66 if somebody's going to come in with experience. And we want somebody with experience. So that's why we're making sure that it's a decent starting salary.
Thank you.
So this division on paper is in essence, when you compare to last year's budget, providing additional $154,000 that can be either used someplace else or isn't going to be required to operate the finance unit.
Through the chair.
Anita?
Okay, yes, Cal. Maybe I'm just listening too closely, that you keep saying on paper.
Right, because when you come to the far left-hand column, remember, we furloughed people. That's what we actually spent last year against our budget. Because one, we had 3 people within my unit furloughed. We had people who were fired. We had people who retired, because we don't pay severance out of our division. We pay severance out of the miscellaneous unit of the general fund. So you don't see those expenses. But when you look at what we spent in finance last year, we only spent $972,000. On paper, we were given $1,159,000. This budget is for finance is $1,000,002. That's what I'm just trying to help you appreciate. We're talking about, remember, the budget. I'm we're working where we're trying to slim down the budget. We may spend less, which means that we have more in reserve. We don't want to spend more, but I'm
Right.
trying to help you appreciate an apples to apples, and that's why it's compared to last year's budget that you approved for the finance division.
Thank you.
And that's how we're going to address each of these divisions as we have these meetings. That's what we're doing, a comparison. It'll be identical with every single division that we talk about. Are there any questions about finance?
Just a point of clarity, Kyle.
Yep.
Samantha.
Your software updates, you said that you're taking on some out of the computer division because you guys are needing them as well?
No,
For
no.
licenses?
No, I'm putting it in our budget so that if we end up needing to buy licenses for some other units because either one of the computers wasn't done or there's a new person coming in, instead of putting all those small budgets in the departments, I'm putting it in finance so that we control it. So when Rick says, I need to get this license, he will generate a PO against this, and that's where I'll approve it from. So those are $3,000 if we need license upgrades for Microsoft.
And that's for any departments. They're going
Right,
to
because
pass them
we-
through finance.
Right, because we went through the chair, we went through this whole process last year. This is if there's any that we didn't cover where we upgraded the licenses.
All right, thank you.
All right, can I move on to the computer division?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So similar setup. And I guess the first thing you're going to start with is why are the wages higher? Well, the wages are higher because of the 1% increase, but let's turn to the page and look at the head count. We are proposing, as council's given us, based on the meetings we had, we need to bring in a network administrator programmer for the fire department. These employees are actually finance employees under the computer division. So when you look at the court administrator and the police administrator, they're actually in the finance. They may work over under the chiefs, but they're actually finance employees. So we are proposing in the civil service, if Rick is on the line, I think last week, civil service approved the job change description. And we are going to in-house potentially fill this position, but at the same time, I think it's going to be on a trial basis. Rick, you're probably best to answer, what you believe you're going to do going forward with regards to this position.
Sorry about that. I updated the job description, went to the Civil Service Commission last week, and they approved the job description, which hasn't been updated, I think, in, 10, 15 years. So it's current and it reflects the job and the flexibility of that position to work at the fire department, as well as, cover any gaps that we would need over here at City Hall or just across the organization in general. So my hopes is to, we're going to get in that to civil service to test here in the next month, to actually test, to hire, I'm hoping March or April.
So as a result of putting that, I'm sorry.
Samantha.
Through the chair. Rick, remind us, I know that we had this conversation. Is this a firefighter or are we bringing someone in to cover their software and to fill gaps for us?
Yeah, there needs, the fire department, they don't have anyone to specifically support their technical needs over there. They're using, they have a captain there that does a lot of he's technical, he's done a great job, but he sort of fills in there at the fire department. So the whole idea of getting a network admin programmer over there, we have technical personnel over at the police department. We have Rick Kane and Chris over there. We have someone supporting the courts. And this is just a way of streamlining and having someone specific for the fire department.
Through the chair.
Julius.
So thank you. So Rick or Kyle, this is we talked about this quite a few times before. It was a specific firefighter who would always fill in and kind of do the technical, like wire up the phones and stuff like that. But that wasn't really his job, right?
Through the chair.
Kyle.
He is a firefighter that we were paying comp time to in hours based on his hourly rate. And he did a lot for the department, but now when issues with union and the fact that he goes on leave because he is in the armed services, and for Rick's purposes, we want to integrate and actually get a uniformity across the system. And right now the fire department is using its in-house things that it's created, and Rick can't support some of that. So we want to start changing that. And by Rick having full oversight, we're going to move in that direction so that we ever have any issues, Rick's entire department could in essence step in. Where right now they'd have to rely on an outside contractor if Tim Freese wasn't available, because we have no background support on what they've done over there with regards to their system, their telephone, and some other of the services that you have software for.
Thank you.
Anita.
To the chair. So Rick, the way this is going to be set up now, with this additional person coming on, this should not be, like if someone goes on vacation, you're not going to have another person coming in for extra pay. They'll just be sliding over, covering that work while one person's off on vacation. Is that how that's going to work?
Through the chair.
Rick.
Yeah. No one will specifically cover for overtime. I mean, we spread out our vacations here within the IT division, and someone who is scheduled to work will cover that.
Okay,
But
thank
no,
you.
there won't be any overtime.
Samantha.
Thank you. So just to be clear, will there need to be any software updates or equipment needs to get everybody on the same page, or has that piece already happened?
Through the chair.
Rick.
The one component over at the fire department that will need an upgrade, and this is something that Kyle alluded to, is their phone system. And we'll be taking a look at, that phone system, and, my plan would be to integrate it into the City Hall hosted system and extend that telephone system, to the fire department. So, but.
So Rick, with that, is that accounted for here for an equipment outlay or for software update? Is that here already, or is that something we have to work on?
Through the chair, that is why the operating services line item is slightly higher, because if we need to go out with a contractor, with a vendor to come in, that's part of where, and we don't know the breakdown if it's going to be services or equipment, or operating supplies. So we put the chunk of it there so that at least it's in one line item, so we could make sure that how much we're talking about. We think we may need $15,000. That's why that line item stands out compared to the other line items. And then as you can see, as you move down, we left $5,000 again, because Rick's unit, given that he has full responsibility for all the software, there's got to be something there that if something were to go wrong, he's got at least some money at his discretion immediately. And if we need more, we would come back to you. But again, like I said, we don't want to budget for it and take it out of somebody else's ability to use it. But there is $5,000 still under the equipment that if in case of an emergency or something is required, we at least can immediately address it. And if we need more, we can come back to you.
Maybe I missed it, but how come the $16,000 from last year wasn't actually spent?
Because we budgeted there for everybody's software. And then we actually, because of charging it off, we charged the departments who used it, and we didn't use it there because, again, it was easier for us to show it in our budget. And then if we needed to actually assist, we would go out and buy it. But because there was enough within savings, because of the furloughs and we spent it out of the other department's budgets for their software, and we didn't have to use it out of our department computer. So that's why you see nothing got spent. Again, you give it to us, but if we know we don't need it, we don't go ahead and just spend down the funds. That's one of the practices when we want to get other department heads to recognize. Doesn't mean that you won't get it again, but if you don't need to spend it, don't spend it.
But you still spent that amount. You just used other departments' budgets to pay for it.
Right, because in the end, those department budgets were, they had savings because of just the way the year played out. So yes, instead of paying for it out of finance computer, we paid for it out of those line items within those divisions that needed the software upgrade for Microsoft. Yes.
Anyone else here for computers? Okay.
All
All
right.
right, Kyle. Next up is City Council.
Yes. Just 1 second, V. Let me grab that document. Okay, this one is on a legal piece of paper just because I thought it would be easier to show all of you what your council budget is so that you understand it versus seeing it the way you've typically seen in the past where you see it by each ward. So as you can see, your budget is slightly higher. In one area that you can understand is under utilities. See the actual expenditure, it was greater than what was budgeted. So of course, I believe you're going to need more money, and that's why there's 9,500. You look at operating services and you're like, why is he doing that? Remember I told you with that asterisk, you actually have encumbered more than what was in your budget of 3,500. You needed roughly 49, and I want to make sure that you have what you spent. And if you didn't end up not using it, fantastic. But if you had expended all of what was encumbered, you would need about $4,900. So that is why you see that in your initial budget. So in essence, it is showing a year-over-year increase of $2,000 against your operating budget. Then when you look at all of your discretionary, it is identical. And if you look at, well, why did somebody spend more than what they were in their budget? Remember, some of you in December of 19 passed legislation, but we didn't pay those bills or provide that funding until January of 2020. So that again is soft close. We brought forward the budget of 19. You weren't over, but remember, it's an actual expenditure. So that's why it shows up in that format of being greater than your appropriation budget. Then it moves down to payroll and benefits. And the change that's occurring there is a change in one or two of your medical coverage. And so when I take what's going to be actual based on where you are as of now with your coverage, there will be savings this year. And the fringe benefit goes up because one, you all get an additional year of longevity, and I have to build that in for the 7 of you.
What, we get paid longevity? I didn't think we did that.
If you don't, then see, there's a mistake I made, because that's what I would have done. And if you don't get it, there is a backing to see. Again, I have a lot of line items. I do all this by myself.
You
And I'm
just
just
tested
so
to see if you were
accustomed to
listening.
building in longevity because it's the only one that changes.
You're just on autopilot, Kyle.
Yes. So I will go back as part of the process, and because what'll happen is I won't make this change in this doc. I'll get to roll this whole budget to another level. So I'll be able to keep this set as is and then make changes in a different set from the original. And so I'll be able to track those. So I'll make sure that I correct for that. But that was an error on my behalf.
Thanks, Lauren.
Well, it's not that you would get it. It just means that there would be unused funds, and we don't want to do that. Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
For the chair, I don't know if, if we had to put Jimmy and Anita's history and longevity, we'd be really in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. Yes. So in the end, that $8,000 decrease is going to get a slightly higher, but in essence, you year over year as a unit are spending less than what you were given in your budget in 2020, based on the right-hand column and rolling up those totals. Are there any questions about your council budget?
Anita?
Through the chair. V,
Yes,
are we good for all of our stuff? For the office?
my budget did not change from 2020. It's the same thing.
Yep.
As a department head, I wasn't presented an opportunity to say, hey, V, what would you like? Because they changed the system this year, but I'm fine with starting where I left off in 2020.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Kyle, did we have to work in any special costs for things like this, like Zoom and, you know, the recordings and saving those? Like, are we?
That is what, when you look at operating services, that's why you may see some units having, when you look at actuals, because again, there were costs incurred in November, December, we paid in January. So you would see that in operating services. So yes, there are some increases as a result of just the way we do work, the way we do business now.
Julius?
Just a quick question. I think Mike had his hand up first though.
Go ahead, Julius, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Is that how it worked with all the department heads this year? Nobody had input?
Through the chair, yes. Outside of the enterprise funds, we spoke during our staff meetings that we were going to come to you with an initial document where all we did was almost as best we could provide exactly what they had last year, unless there was reasons that we could reduce it or there was needs where we had to give you more. We also, once this process of going through, we wanted to ask you, do you want to dip further into the reserve and do some things? Because there's going to be department requests as part of these 3 questions. We're not answering them in finance and in council, just because our departments are more internal, and we're the core unit of trying to show the others that you can do more with less. So the beginning process is, if we just do a plain vanilla budget based on what we did last year, how much of our surplus does it require us to use? And that's what we presented a week and a half ago and showed you that we needed $2.3 million of that just to meet these basic needs.
Through the chair.
Anita?
Yes. So does this include the hiring, the wages for the hiring of an additional clerk?
Remember, right now we're talking about council's budget. The next page will be Clerk of Counsel. We haven't.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So is there any more questions on your budget, council?
I just had one
Go ahead, Mike.
for the chair. Kyle, have we considered maybe going back to free Zoom and then we can limit all calls and meetings to 40 minutes? That might be more efficient.
Well, I'm sure not opposed to that. How much it'll save us, I don't know, but it definitely will save us days, hours of our lives. All right. So if you turn the page, you see your salaries. Those haven't changed. If you turn the page again, now you have Clerk of Counsel in front of you. And what you're seeing there is what I believed would be required to meet your needs. And at the same time, there were a few line items that were lower, but at the same time, there were some line items that needed some more funding. And so that's why I went through and made sure that the monies were made available so that you guys could fulfill your obligations as council and Clerk of Counsel. I don't know if B has any concerns, but if she does, like I said, I tried to make sure that we looked at what everybody used and what everybody needs, and to the best of our ability provide that.
Through the chair.
Valencia.
Kyle, will you take a look at the position, the second assistant clerk? You have 38.1. I got a figure from Dia on yesterday and it was showing 38.42629. I think she was doing the update for the 1% increase.
I did, and I noticed I didn't change it, but if you
Okay.
notice, I didn't do anything with that because it's still there for the whole year. And I'm gonna update it on my document here. I'm not gonna update it in your salary on the budget because really I should actually lower it because we're already in February.
Right.
So, but I have updated it on my payroll document, the page that shows the head count, so I have it correct. But at the time I had done the budget, I forgot that position was also gonna get adjusted even though it was unfilled. But that is the full calendar year. And I left it in there as the full calendar year. So
I just want to make sure that the base is correct because when I advertise, I need to advertise the correct base. So is that the correct base, 38.42629?
that is the correct base. And when we
Thank
move
you.
this budget document forward, and say we're in March, I will go in and reduce this
Right.
for 9. And so those savings will then fall to the bottom line and free up more of the reserve not being used because we're aware that now, if you have a better appreciation, if you think it would be June, we could do half. If you want to provide me with some input, we could, curtail this a little more just for the current budget year. If you think you've got a better window of when you think you would hire this person, just to consider that.
Kyle, how much are we spending on the temp expenses?
The temp expenses comes out of a line item called professional service, and I can use the professional service dollars for special projects, which is totally separate from the staff position. So Kyle will utilize some of the salary of a full-time staff person, which we currently do not have, and fill the professional service line item for the temp if I am to go over that, which is still ultimately a savings because you don't have your staff person and you're not paying medical benefits. So
Right.
the
I was just
professional
wondering-
services is typically separate dollar amount, and it's usually like 5,000.
Okay, so you really haven't ever had to transfer any of that money then, according to at least this document, barely, you're $6,000 in professional services. So you're really not using that much money or the temp isn't costing us that much money.
No, she is not. Absolutely. She works 20 hours a week. And she also fills in because again, it's just Jennifer and I. So she is around if something was to happen or we're both on vacation to provide this office some level of office coverage, but that is really not what she's hired for. She's really supposed to be up on the 7th floor doing the special projects.
Julius?
Thank you, through the chair. V, is there anything else you need in the office? I know it has something to do with needing some software updates and some other equipment in the office. Is that budgeted?
It's not budgeted because I wasn't given an opportunity to discuss my budget this year. And I don't have current numbers that were presented maybe three years ago. So I haven't met with vendors and any of that stuff. So I don't have current numbers. Right now, it's important to hire or get a qualified third person in this office for 2021.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if there's no questions with regards to city council.
Wait, I got one.
Julius?
So V, are you gonna get numbers for what's needed or can it wait?
As far as
software updates.
If realistically we're going to do something, I can spend the time to get the numbers. But realistically, if it's not the year to do this because of all of the other hindrances we have, the software updates that I'm talking about are well over $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And that was a few years ago. So, you know, is this the year to have a real conversation about that? Then I'd have to spend the time and, you know, call the vendors out and meet with them again and all of that. But my priority is to get a third body in here. If I had to pick one or two, I want to get a person in here.
Agreed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I agree, but
Samantha?
thank you. I do agree, but we have taken the time across all the city departments, a good portion of the city departments this past year and the year before, in upgrading the software and making sure that things can be done like GIS and the Microsoft Mass update. So I do think that it's time, and it's for sure needs to happen. So I would like to see us make sure that we keep up with the rest of the city and make that happen, because we have for every department, and we're just as important, and what we do here is just as important. So I think it's time to go ahead and move that forward, because the precedent has been set that each department is on that path of upgrading our software and our equipment so that we can better respond in the digital age.
Yeah, I agree with you, Samantha. I mean, we have a lot of legal responsibilities in our department as well, and we need to make sure that we're up to date from a software perspective, and just so that we can meet those legal abilities, because they change as technology changes. So I don't know, you know, if that's a possibility to look into this year, if we can do both, if we have the capacity to do both, hire and at least get some numbers.
We at least need to get
Mike,
some numbers.
Through the chair,
plan, I guess, a plan of what we want to upgrade.
through the chair,
Revisit that one. Sorry, Mike, I keep interrupting you. Go ahead.
Valencia, what type of software are we talking about, and specifically that you had the quotes on a few years ago, to make sure we're all on the same page?
Records management software. This office is the keeper of the historical records. So every software package relates to the efficiency of what we do in this office. So it's records management software and the maintenance programs and paperless agenda management software.
Okay, so being able to be paperless, even with the development of legislation as well?
That would be the ultimate goal. That's the Cadillac of what's out there and what's offered. But with that, you have to incorporate the other department heads in the law department and integrating a specific piece of software that I'm interested in, because all of those departments participate in the creation of legislation. So, I mean, you can get software that just Jen and I would work with, or you can get the Cadillac that will incorporate the actual workflow of preparing legislation and anything in between.
Okay, so I don't know, Kyle, if some of those costs, if it's, you know, used by everyone, would be able to be shared by other departments as well, based on the volume of legislation or something like that. So that may be something to explore.
Again, remember, you are the appropriating authority. If you want to put that money in your budget, put it in your budget.
Through the
Okay.
chair,
Who was that?
through the chair.
Oh, Anita, sorry.
Yes, through the chair. So Valencia, if my colleagues, I think I'm hearing them correctly, we would like you to go up there and start doing that, reaching out to the vendors and getting the correct pricing. Am I right, folks?
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all support this this upgrade, and it seems like it would help everyone if we took this step.
And through the chair,
Anita?
Valencia, will this also help the public if they went online to search our do online searches for legislation and so forth? Does this enhance that ability at all?
Maybe and maybe not. I mean, I physically post our minutes and agendas online after every meeting, so it's already there.
Okay,
I presented information years ago and it was not conducive for the council at that time to pay for that. So as far as all of our ordinances and agendas, we've gone back 30 years and Rick and his department have helped me create a system called Agenda Master. And so we physically update the web search, because we used to have to go to different areas of City Hall and dig through file cabinets and find ordinances and resolutions. All of that is electronic, but it's in-house man-made between myself and the IT department, creating kind of what we wanted to use. So people can search online right now because I post that. That's part of our processing in this office. So yes, to answer your question, some of the software programs do offer that. Some offer it as an a la carte, some offer it as part of the overall. So there's so much out there. And it'll take time to meet with vendors and figure out what's going to be best for this office. And I would start the process over again, because the last time I brought it to the council, it wasn't something that they were willing to buy. So.
okay, Cal.
Julius?
So,
Thank you.
Chair, so what we're gonna do at this point is meet with vendors, figure out exactly how much it's gonna cost, and do we set aside $25,000 for, just so we have that in the budget. So if we don't get the Cadillac version, at least there's some money there to go ahead and make something happen.
Through the chair, if I can make a recommendation,
Okay.
you have the authority to at any time appropriate it. So if you guys wanted to, after she gets the quotes, have a discussion and figure out what it is that you want to get and what it costs, you could all sponsor a piece of legislation yourselves, putting that money in the budget. And then again, because we have the surplus, which will be on the books. So it's not like we're passing a budget that doesn't have excess capacity left over. It would just mean that when you put it up there, you would be putting it up there for what you're going to spend. And so then that way, you're not in essence blocking out anybody else's ability if there is other changes you're going to make, because until you know how much it is going to require you to use, it frees up and leaves that money set aside that if we end up starting generating refunds. But again, I can't imagine we're going to go through all that money. But it makes it easier for you then to see that it stands out on its own and it's done as a piece of ordinance. And that I don't believe would be in any difficult manner for you to, as a group, be comfortable with. But if you want to put it in as a line item, it would be much more helpful to me if you at least knew how much you were going to need.
Thank you.
Is that it then with regards to conversation and discussion on Clerk of Court and Council's budget? All right.
Okay, up next is Civil Service. I see Jonathan Huff has joined the meeting. Jimmy Hughes has also joined the meeting. Dwayne Kitchen has also joined the meeting. I'm getting get to you guys before now, so sorry about that. All right, Civil Service.
Good afternoon, everyone. Do you have the packet before you and what we're requesting before we get started?
We do. It starts with your travel costs.
Got you. So if you look at the 2021 budget that we're requesting, $2,000 for travel. We have $20,000 for professional service, and our professional service contract is the bulk of where our expense is. And that is for a lot of our promotional testing that we do, as well as any legal costs that we may occur. If you look at the 2020 budget, you see an increase of, we had $32,000 we spent, and a big portion of that, and Kyle can kind of chime in, was based on legal issues that the Civil Service Commission is fighting, or potentially still fighting, to this day. So the bulk of our expense comes in our professional service line item. Our advertising is 10,000. Last year we spent 95, $8,100 in that. I look for us to not spend as much this coming year in our advertising budget because a lot of our postings have gone online. Okay, so a lot of that won't be in the Vindicator or what have you. All that would be posted on our city's website. Okay, and then if you look at our rental, it's 3,000. Our operating service budget has increased, and that is due to our NeoGov system that we have incorporated with the Civil Service Department.
Excuse me. I think
Anita?
I think I misunderstood you. Did you say you're no longer advertising these jobs and things through the paper or anything, and it's only online?
It's strictly online, yes. And I can explain more. And with the NeoGov package, our jobs are on governmentjobs.com. So a lot of the information is posted on a national website for recruiting for government type positions. And we still would advertise in the Vindicator for some of our bigger exams like police, fire, and such. But a lot of the advertisement can go right into, or is incorporated right into the NeoGov system. And if you look at our operating services, that is the increase that you see is for that license and subscription that we have to pay yearly for that service, to be able to incorporate that online service to get applications.
So Jonathan, so that your advertising at $10,000 is your traditional advertising, and your operating services at $8,000 is your NeoGov online advertising?
Well, that is part of, we're just incorporated the NeoGov. So if you look last year, our operating system or operating budget was not that. And it's increased to 8,000, as you can see.
To the chair, Lauren,
Kyle?
we purchased his software with COVID funds, and there's going to be an annual maintenance agreement, and that is going to now be budgeted in operating services. So we're going to have to pay the maintenance agreement every year now to have this software. But the software was not purchased by city funds. We used the COVID money because this met one of the criteria of the funds that were provided to us by the federal government. But now we need to make sure that on an annual basis, we have the maintenance cost built into the budget, and that is what's in the operating service line item. That's where we'll pay for that maintenance cost.
And that's $7,000?
No. It is roughly $6,400 a year, and he needs the remaining line item. In 5107 in 2020, they did not spend as much funds because we were able to practically buy everything that he needed with COVID funds. So that is why that line item is down so much, because again, we have, instead of having people come into City Hall, we will look for ways to minimize that and use the COVID funds. And that's why that line item was not used to the near of its normal activity. But now that the COVID funds were one time, he's going to fall back into his normal pattern, in addition to needing the money for the maintenance costs.
Okay, so then how come the advertising line item didn't actually go down?
Because through the chair, I am not meeting with every single person. This whole process was me looking at the numbers. So here is an example where Jonathan is informing us, because we had the luxury of sitting down and talking about the numbers. I did, as you heard Valencia earlier, this process I went through. I did not have the time to sit down and have everybody go through some of these line items. So that's what part of this process tonight. So I'm learning too now about this, because we haven't had the normal procedures that we've done in the past when we've talked about our budgets on every single line item based, discussion.
Okay, so Jonathan, then I'm just, based on what you said, that $10,000 actually would be less for this year. Okay, do you have a better estimate?
Through the chair, yes, it'd be correct. I still would want some money in advertising to put in there for, again, like some of our bigger exams. I know probably in the spring or summer we'll do an exam for firefighters. So I would like to, put some money in advertising, maybe to put it on the digital billboard and have in the paper. So I would like some money in the advertising. However, I probably would want some of that leftover money to go into either professional services or the operating expense.
Julius?
Jonathan, can you explain how this software kind of help, streamlines the process in your department? I mean, you don't really have a whole lot of people working with you in your department. So, how did this help you, kind of make things a bit easier for you?
Through the chair. Yes, Councilman, due to COVID, we all had to kind of, change our strategy and look at things a little different and how we operate. As you know, there's only 2 people in this department, and we come in contact with the public when applying for a position. So with the encompassing of this new software, NeoGov, we're able to take online applications where we don't have to come in contact with that individual. I mean, if you go through the prompts and create a profile, you can apply for a job right on your telephone. So we've incorporated that software so people don't have to come in, to apply for a position. They can go to the city's website and look at the, postings that we have and apply right from the city's, website. So that's there now. If you guys currently look at the city's website, we're taking applications for a finance supervisor and the finance department. And as you can see the look and layout of the page. Actually, Rick Deek's department just put on the city's webpage on how we're going live. We went live on the online application process. So it has helped. It has, streamlined the process of people coming into City Hall. They can apply at night, anytime at night. It's on, 24/7 through that application period. So it's really helped us tremendously, and it'll cut down on paper and pen. So no more old school paper and pen, application. So I hope I answered your question, Councilman.
Yeah, thank you, Don.
Anita?
To the chair, once we're past COVID, will the people be able to come back into your office and get the application to them paper?
No, we have done away with that system. So
is that legal?
Is
it legal? Has the law department approved this?
Yes, the law department has approved it. The commission has approved it. I mean, if you go to any organization, a lot of people don't take paper and pen applications anymore. A lot of it's done online.
I understand that a lot of organizations don't, but we're not an organization. We are government. And
right. And NeoGov.
Let me finish. All I want to know is, have there been any court challenges to this kind of system? And did the city that was challenged, did they prevail?
See, that would have to be a question directed toward the law department. As I'm aware, I don't think this has been challenged. NeoGov is probably one of the foremost software systems that deal specifically with governments that are all over the country. So we're not. This is nothing new. I would say the city of Youngstown has been late to the party on updating the system. Most major cities in the state of Ohio use this software.
I understand about the software, but I'm saying if someone doesn't want, if someone is downtown and they're in City Hall, why should they have to go get on the, go on a computer and not go up to the 7th floor? I think you're 6th or 7th floor. Go to your floor and just grab a handwritten copy. I mean, it's that simple. Someone is there. If they want to get an application and you're going to say, oh, you know what? No application, go home and do it online. I want to find out.
We're not saying go home. We're saying this is the new process.
Okay.
That's all.
So
We're not
there were-
rejecting anyone. We're saying this is the process on how to apply for a position with the city of Youngstown.
I understand that, and I will be running this past the law department because I want to make sure that we're going to prevail, because in a city like Youngstown, where everybody's not all hardwired in, something that we all know about because that's one of the concerns dealing with COVID, and yet this is how we're going to go with the city's jobs. So are we going to be like putting someone at a disadvantage because they're not wired in? I just want to make sure, I'll ask our law department to make sure that we're going to be kosher on this.
Through the chair.
Well,
So I agree with Councilman Davis in making sure that we don't isolate people who don't have access. And my suggestion is that you consider adding a kiosk outside with a step-by-step, which is a lot of businesses have done that, that have gone to application processes that are purely online. Go online, visit this site, and put your information in, because it also helps HR as well. But I would just double check to make sure we're not isolating anyone. And usually how they remedy that is having a kiosk available to someone that walks up and just an instruction sheet on how to apply through the city's website.
I think that's a good idea, Samantha. Okay. I just have one question. You mentioned professional services. A big chunk of that is for lawsuits that we're currently battled in. Kyle?
Through the chair, we don't want to go too details, but we are currently in the Supreme Court of Ohio fighting a case against one of our police officers. And we are using outside counsel to represent the city at the Supreme Court. And we've incurred to date almost $23,000 to fight this situation having to do with a test taking and the outcome of that test taking. And it's being predicated by one police officer in the city's police department.
And so how come we're not using in-house?
To the chair, this has to do with filing at the Supreme Court level on a level that is best covered by firm that has expertise in this. If this is something that council as a whole would like to address, it probably would be better served with direct contact to the law department to understand what's going on, because again, we don't want to be talking about a legal case, especially a legal case that's at the Supreme Court.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that I'm fully aware, or that we're properly representing the amount of money we outsource on legal services. If it's not all budgeted in the law department, that chunk of number that, you know, we were provided with a couple months ago as outsourced from the law department actually doesn't incorporate something like this or other departments that may have law. Through
the chair, that firm was represented in the document because Retzel is that firm. So yes, it was included. We don't do that. I mean, when you ask for total legal costs, just some of those costs were not incurred by the law department. They were incurred by civil service, because actually the civil service division is being, or the committee, correct, Jonathan, is being sued at the Supreme Court level.
Okay, so it's still that number, that's $23,000 is still rolled up into that $250 or so thousand that was provided.
Through the chair, that is correct. That is correct.
Okay. Anyone else for civil service? Julius?
Thank you, through the chair. I don't know if I should ask my question now, but Cal, is that the total of what's been spent, or is that what's been spent so far, or is there more to come, or do we know?
Through the chair, that was what was spent through last year. Yes, there is an invoice that I have in my possession right now that I need to share with Jonathan for more work being done with regards to that filing.
Do we see any end in sight, or do we expect to be spending more throughout the year?
I
Hopefully,
unfortunately don't
Kyle?
know, through the chair. I unfortunately don't know enough about the legal case. That is definitely going to be a question that you would ask the law director. I just know that it's because they're challenging the Civil Service Commission. That's why those expenses should be coming out of the Civil Service Department budget, because it's the Civil Service Commission that's being deemed maybe it acted inappropriately. I'm saying that because that's what the person who is suing the city is saying. I don't believe that, but we have to represent ourselves, and that's why it's being done, because it's been taken to the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Kyle.
Samantha?
Thank you. So just so I'm clear, the legal services show up here because the commission is involved. So our city attorneys don't represent the commission. Why I don't understand why the legal services aren't showing up. Help me to understand why they're not showing up in the law department.
Through the chair, we are tracking the services because the Civil Service Commission is being sued. We are making sure that the cost, because again, these costs are being borne by actions of the Civil Service Commission. That's why we're paying it out of there, because we don't want to incorporate it into the law department, because these are not your typical law department responsibilities. They handle issues with regards to employee negotiations, court cases, dealing with situations where employees have done things incorrectly. The Civil Service Commission's a little different because of the fact of who they are, and that's why these costs are being tracked here.
Kyle, who makes the determination? I mean, we're outsourcing to a law firm who's in it to make money, and the more they work, the more money they make. When do we get to a point where we're like, okay, we're not, are you dragging this on? We need to just make a deal and stop incurring our own costs and legal fees.
To the chair, this question is, the finance director is not an expert in what's going on at the Supreme Court. You got to take this, I'm sorry, to the.
No, but that's a finance question. Have you guys discussed, like, okay, this is our threshold for legal expenses because we're outsourcing everything. So, are we vetting these outsourced legal places to know that they're not just dragging us down into court cases and filing appeal after appeal after appeal so they can continue to make money off of us because we never gave them
through the chair,
a financial threshold?
Unfortunately, it is not us who is filing. It is this police officer who, because he doesn't have to have representation, and because it's at the Supreme Court level, he is the one that keeps reintroducing, giving new evidence, new things that we unfortunately then have to answer to. And that's why these costs are escalating, because this person is continuing to press home this situation. And now it's at the Supreme Court, and the city has to defend itself because it's defending the Commission of Civil Service. I should not be the one. I should not. You got to redirect this. I'm sorry. This is a law director situation. This is a Supreme Court case.
I'm speaking in general terms, Kyle. Calm down. I'm speaking in general terms. Like, we spend a lot of money on outsourced legal services. Is there a conversation amongst the administration by saying, okay,
through the chair, there are some costs that we spend that you as a group do not appreciate what goes on behind the scenes. And one of them is labor negotiations. We are in our 15th meeting with one union. And in those meetings, the documentation that has to be tracked for this upcoming tomorrow 2-day fact finding that I will be cross-examined for 2 days, the documentation, the book that needs to be prepared for this document in this presentation and all the things. We have time to do some things, but there are some things that there people are experts in, And we are not being gouged as you always think. There could be some cases, but there are times, and I've been here long enough to know, when it comes to labor negotiations, if we weren't best represented, we wouldn't have a pattern of zeros and ones. And that does keep costs at bay. So I at least can say that from labor negotiations, the money is well spent. With regards to some of the others, again, each case is unique and why it goes outside. What some of these lawyers that we hire have expertise in fields that you can't have in every single lawyer that you have on your staff within City Hall. So if you have questions and you want to know about areas, when the law department is in front of you, those are the questions you ask the law director. I don't have the answers that are going to make you feel good or be able to give you a quantitative explanation, because you need to understand the law director knows best about dealing with the law issues that the city is having to address.
Okay. Anita?
It was so long. Clearly it wasn't important. Sorry. I forgot.
Samantha?
Yes, I don't want to belabor the point. I know that we have law coming up, but I don't see anyone from the law department here. And I feel like we have a lot of questions for them. So I don't know how we handle that without anyone here representing. I'm sorry, Kyle, you're feeling like you're getting a barrage of questions about something you can't answer, but it is a legitimate concern because we are outsourcing quite a bit of legal work under the guise of we have less people and we're getting more work done. So I think we all want to hear from the law department on that, if my colleagues agree.
I'm just assuming that somebody will join the meeting before they're up, but if not, we'll have to.
Through the chair.
Anita?
I'm good waiting I can hold my question for the law department off until they're here on their day and put it in with them.
It's today, so that's why she's.
They'll be on here later on.
Yeah, that's what hopefully they join. Okay. Anyway, okay. So anything, if we're keep scrolling on our paperwork here, for the civil service employee headcount. Questions or comments? Okay, move on to the mayor's office.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, council.
Regards to the mayor's office, I do want to point out that the mayor and I spoke, and he wishes, and I understand his position, that I had included filling as a partial year the Federal Plaza director. So we are going to, as part of our proposal, when we roll this budget document forward, we are going to put a partial year cost associated back into the budget. But I see that the mayor is on, and he probably would like to address his own budget himself, but if he would like me to continue, I will, Mayor.
No, that's quite, through the chair. I just, Kyle made a good point. I just wanted to make sure that if we put it in the budget, that at some point we're going to get over this pandemic. Hopefully we'll have a lot more opening or a little more relaxed during the summer. I just want to make sure that we're prepared for it. And I didn't want to not have that there in order if the time comes. So I'm asking Kyle to maybe figure out what the partial number may look like for the year or half the year and go from there.
Are we changing the job title? Wasn't it Director of Downtown Events?
I think that might be what I've just had it in there as that job description for year after year, and I've never changed it. So just Executive Federal Plaza Director. I will update that on that document.
To the chair.
Did you have a salary number in there?
Well, yes, but we backed it out. That's why there is no cost associated. That's why if you look at the budget, why it shows the savings, because there is no And that's what the mayor is pointing out. Him and I spoke last night, and we're going to, when we roll this and move on to the next level of looking at some changes, we're going to put a partial salary for a few months, and we haven't determined how many of those months are going to be, of possibly filling that position again.
Julius?
Thank you, through the chair. Who's doing the job now? Because I still think the position already should have been filled even through COVID, but I still get a barrage of questions about events and things going on in the city, and I always have to direct them to the mayor's office. But is there anybody that's actually doing that job, and when do we expect to hire for the job? Because I still think there's a lot of work that this position should be doing.
Through the chair, we've assembled a committee. When COVID hit, we did not want to put anyone in that position, not realizing that there was not a lot of work to be done. Through COVID and shutdown, we have not been issuing permits because of the governor's orders. So we want to fill it. We think this summer we may see a little more action and a lot more activities happening, but we just want to be prepared for it. We didn't feel it was necessary to put someone there and there's no activity that are going on.
Basha?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm not sure this would be directed to Kyle or to the mayor. When you guys are going to be considering a partial salary, are we looking to hire an employee, or are you guys thinking about contracting it out?
Through the chair, that's a good question, Councilwoman, and we've not gotten to that decision yet. So we'll probably have it at where it's the full amount, and if we decide to go contract, then it will be less the amount.
And
Basha?
thank you. Follow up, and this actually is a follow up, I guess, from what Councilman Oliver asked. Mayor, you said that we did not have someone, but in lieu, we were using some kind of committee to, I guess, filter through those questions. Who was that? Who was that committee?
Through the chair, that committee comes out of my office.
But like who is it comprised of? Like our employees that we already have on staff?
Through the chair, that is right. I take my cabinet level members and the department heads, and they're made up of that committee.
Thank you.
Anita?
Through the chair, the position was the citywide events coordinator, and we're about to hit March. I don't want to see this thing funded for a whole year. We're not going to be out of this thing before June, and I'm sorry. I'm gonna tell you, I think this is ridiculous that we're worried about an events coordinator and a citywide events coordinator, and we're still in a shutdown. Mr. Mayor, you may want to see that thing funded. But I'm gonna tell you, I don't want to see it funded. I don't want to see it funded until the governor is about ready to say, open up. I mean, why put the money there? Why hire someone to sit down there and do nothing? You know, I'm not running for, yes, I'm ticked right now. I'm not running for office. I'm not playing games. We don't need to be dealing with this thing right now. That is my opinion, Mr. Mayor, and everyone else. You know, I think it's right the way it is.
Thank you, Councilwoman, for your input.
Thank you.
Samantha?
Thank you, through the chair. So just to be clear, the budget that the downtown events coordinator has that they budget for events, the Christmas lights, and I'm just saying events that don't require anybody, or in case something does happen, maybe let's say the Italian Fest is able to happen in August. The dollars are all being situated or set aside for those events like they were last year. And we're preparing in case there is an opening in that way, and we're clearing permits through this committee.
Through the chair, that is correct, Councilwoman.
Jimmy?
And wasn't there something about a civil service announcement, and they went forward with some selection process for that job? In the initial stage, what happened with that?
Through the chair, Councilman, I'm not really sure what you're referring to as it relates to civil service in that position.
This position has nothing to do with civil service then?
In direct response to the chair, no, it does not.
Okay, then I misunderstood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this budget actually reflects not funding it, is that correct, Kyle?
The chair, that is correct. Currently, yes.
Okay, so if 6 months from now or 3 months from now, the administration decides they want to fund it, you'll have to come to council anyway and request it.
If that was the chosen path of the administration, yes. But if we decide that we want to potentially, as we move forward the budget process and put something back in there, we will at least notify you that we are asking and to see what your feedback would be as a committee as a whole.
Okay. So you're saying that you may, okay. Any other questions on the mayor's actual budget or his head count page? Okay. Don't see anything. Up next, unfortunately, is the law department.
Through the chair, I'm going to try to get in contact with the law director. So we had something planned. So give me a moment and I'm going to mute
Sure.
myself.
Valencia, are we allowed to take like a 5-minute recess online?
Yeah, you can motion for it.
Okay. Can I have a motion for that then?
Madam
moved.
Chair,
Second.
Okay, we will take a 5-minute recess. It's 5:26. So we'll be back here at 5:31 to see if the law director can join us.
Play that show music.
You want me to play some music?
Yeah.
Rick Deek is going to play some music. He's going to carry us through this short recess. Rick, are you out there?
Council, I think we're still being recorded. We're not going to turn YouTube live off and then on.
Hey, just letting you know. Because
mute yourself. Mute yourself.
for those of you that are still listening, I just wanted to let everybody know that I believe the law department is going to be on at 5:45 because everybody was scheduled per particular time. So I believe that they're going to be coming on at that time. Is that correct, Kyle?
That's what I understand. And I'm emailing the Zoom meeting password number to the law director as we speak.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make everybody aware. Thanks.
Are we back?
Yeah, I'm gonna need another motion since we technically told the law department they didn't have to come on until 5:45. We should probably take a break until at least then. So if I can have another motion to break until 5:45.
Through the chair, I would like to make a motion that we break until 5:45.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Let the record reflect that we will come back at 5:45.
Cal, you're not on mute.
Do I need to be?
I was just letting you know.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. I was gonna call you.
I'm just working and Can you see your office email if I send it as a PDF on your phone?
Hello, this is Jeff here. Thank you for your patience waiting for me.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Good, no problem. I know we had you scheduled for 5:45. We just moved quicker than we usually do.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you.
We're just gonna get started at 5:45 here, so another couple
Okay,
minutes.
no problem. Terrific. Thank you. Hi, how's everyone doing today?
Hey, Jeff.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Jeff,
Morning, Councilman. How are you, sir?
every day is a good day.
Absolutely.
Kyle, I would say those numbers are making you bald, but I don't think that's really the case, but
It's me again. Listen, kid, you gotta hide those bags. Monkey is in the banana.
not like there's a problem going on here or nothing, you know.
Call me. It's the third message. Where the hell is that kid?
I like the fact that I don't have to worry about cutting my hair or washing it or making it look nice.
Man, I can't tell you the things that people said about me, so I'm just gonna move on past all of that.
Oh, the struggle is real.
Really, really, Julius.
I wasn't outside today. Is it nicer than it's been? Because it's hot in my office right now.
Oh, it's really nice. It's melting. When the ice is
Yeah.
melting, it's nice.
Yeah, I haven't left all day since I got here at 8, so I hope to get out before the sun sets.
Tomorrow's supposed to be knocking on 50.
Excuse me, Council, Mr. Limbian is here. Can we resume the meeting?
I think
Yeah,
we have
I made a motion
1 minute.
to wait till 5:45.
Oh, my computer's showing 5:45, sorry.
I concur. Mine says the same.
Mine doesn't yet.
Mine doesn't either. I'll make the motion as soon as it's 5:45.
I'm gonna go back to mute so I won't get hollered at.
Okay, through the chair, I would like to make a motion to reconvene the meeting of council as a whole.
Second.
Good. It is 5:45. We will reconvene our meeting here, and Jeff Limbian has joined the meeting for the record. And we will get started with his budget for law and risk here.
Would you like me to start, or did you have some questions you just wanted to start directing to me?
Yeah, Jeff, you can just run down. We have the page that starts sort of with your Fund 5100 operating, and then just your payroll by employee page. So if there's anything you want to go through or point out, or.
Yes, I think the most glaring thing that I'm sure everybody has a question about is the 2020 actual expenses and the professional services at 137,202. I'm guessing you all think that that's outrageous, and I could not agree more. That is largely a product of not having a staff that is seasoned or educated enough, or having enough time to do the highly technical work required of some of the litigation we've had of late. The Russell and Andrus representation for the wastewater and water, frankly, debacle is a highly specialized type of litigation that simply couldn't be handled in-house to the exclusion of everything. It could have been done if it was to the exclusion of everything else. We tried in vain at the beginning of the Brown administration to hire a person in-house to do the union negotiation work, but and I know I'm preaching to the choir and saying the same old thing, but unless we're willing to pay people to stay, they're going to move on quickly. We had a person who, Dan DeCenzo, who did labor relations work and with our assistance, we could have collectively done all the negotiating in-house. He left to become a magistrate for a higher wage. There are, I mean, you can kind of go example after example of those kinds of circumstances, which is the reason why I think it's very significant and important to pay lawyers in the Youngstown Law Department as you would in a law firm in Youngstown. But I understand that there are budgetary constraints that everybody has to be attentive to. Another thing that came up this year was the Michael Cox litigation, in which he actually brought the Civil Service Commission into the fray. Unfortunately, the litigation isn't that complicated in my estimation, but the fact is that the city law department cannot represent both the city against Michael Cox and the Civil Service Commission. It would be a conflict of interest for us to appear before the Civil Service Commission and ask them to make decisions for us, and then to also say, and now we're going to be your attorney. We regularly have an attorney before the Civil Service Commission providing ad hoc information. I guess you could call it advice, but when it comes to representing them, it's just simply not something that would pass muster from an ethical standpoint. So that's why there was that extraordinary expense there. There was another circumstance when the sanitation workers wanted to become unionized. And once again, we're developing a union, or excuse me, a labor relations arm in our office, but that's quite a painstaking process. There are many facets to any form of law, particularly labor litigation, and so that I think ended up costing us $17,000, if memory serves me, with Manchester Bennett, an extraordinary amount of money. But when you're trying to make sure that a new union doesn't get a foothold and take extraordinary advantage of the city, I think there's the long-term benefit to making sure you have appropriate legal representation. Is there any
questions?
Thank you, through the chair.
Samantha?
Not Cal, Jeff.
Yes, ma'am.
I see that we have added 100, it's 122 this coming year. How do you plan to address these issues? Or more specifically, what is the specialties in our law department? What are their focuses of our attorneys in our department? It seems like we're outsourcing a substantial amount of the work. How do we get to the point where we don't have to outsource so much? So I guess my first question is, can you go over the specialties of your staff so maybe we can understand clearer, because I feel like everything you're talking about is under the umbrella of municipal law. So
it is. And the vast majority of work, like I said, could have been done in-house if we had the staff for it. If you want me to go name by name, I'll be happy to. Kathleen Thompson has been a prosecutor for, I want to say 15 years, and is doing an outstanding job. That's her niche, her specialty, and handles her court very well. Gene Fair is a veteran. He can do just about anything. He has been a common pleas magistrate. He can do civil work and criminal work. Right now, we have him doing primarily criminal work, but we also utilize him for civil cases as well. Dana Lance is one of the deputy law directors with a vast array of experience and a deep knowledge from a historical standpoint of all things city government. So she knows how to do contract work. She knows the workers' compensation work. She knows the human resources work, working with Marty Kane. James Vivo has been with us about a year. He fits in on the criminal side, but does a lot of the contractual work and real estate work, and he also does claims work. Jeff Moliterno was an extraordinary prosecutor, but it was time to get him to to have him multitask. So he has been doing the lion's share of the litigation work for labor relations, mostly with the fire department and some with the police department. He was actually involved with the union negotiations, or frankly, I think our union negotiations would have cost us even more. The newest person in our office is Adam Bente, who one of his first tasks out of the gate was to work with Nikki Posterly in the CDA office to try to, we did an audit to see if there were things there that could be streamlined so that there weren't any litigation issues down the road from zoning and planning. And I think you can hear from Nikki that she's very happy with what happened there. I think that's everybody. Oh, and then Terry, I'm sorry, there's one other person. Terry Gringa is our part-time lawyer who does primarily does investigations. And I frankly wish, like when there's a claim of a racial discrimination dispute, or if there's a claim that an officer has been treated unfairly by one of her supervisors or his supervisors, it calls for an internal investigation, as our most of our contracts require. Then she handles those, and to see if they have to go any farther. I just want to point out as an example, because we live in a city that's so racially mixed. I'm disappointed that we don't have more lawyers of color. We have tried 4 times in the last 3 years to hire African American or Hispanic lawyers because we think it's appropriate. It sends the right message, and people should be dealing with lawyers who look like them as a to a large extent. You want qualified lawyers, and you want lawyers that are representative of the community. But in all 4 of those circumstances, we simply didn't pay enough, or people found better jobs. I'm in the process of discussing possible hiring with another young man who has, who's the world is his oyster, and he can go wherever he wants. He's in Cleveland right now, but I would love to have a young lawyer of color to be part of the educational program that we keep trying to get off the ground. But every time we start that, then someone moves to greener pastures. So while I know some of these numbers look like high numbers in terms of what lawyers are making, I got to be honest, they're not high numbers, and we're doing our city and our citizens a disservice by not hiring or paying lawyers what they should be paid. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you for thinking about equity and equality when it comes to your hiring practices and moving forward in the law department. But you did leave out one thing. Can you explain to me what your specialty or what your expertise is, or what you do overall with the law department, and how you're managing the prosecutor's office and our city law department?
Sure. I started out as an assistant prosecutor with the city in 1991. Prior to that, I had 3 years of experience in the Court of Appeals as a judicial law clerk for Judge D'Onofrio, who recently passed. After about 4 years as the assistant city prosecutor, I was the city prosecutor for about 3 years. And then at the end of the Ungaro administration for 10 months, I was the city law director. After that, I went into private practice and handled everything from domestic work, juvenile work, some contractual issues, a considerable amount of litigation. I was a trial lawyer for probably, well, actually, I've been a trial lawyer all of my career, but exclusively a trial lawyer for about 10 years. I decided I wanted to make sure I was one of the best, even though if I could toot my own horn, I have a pretty amazing record for litigation. I don't really talk about that very often, but I have one of the best win records as a trial lawyer in the city of Youngstown. I went back to school and got a master's degree in litigation and dispute resolution. And I came back. I was also a magistrate in juvenile court. And so I believe I have more than an adequate appreciation of enough areas of law. You know, law is one of those things that you kind of focus in on a certain specialty, but I think if you're a solo practitioner, you develop kind of an appreciation of many areas of the law. Just as by way of example, one of those that was never that familiar with was labor relations, and so that's why we hired a labor relations lawyer, and to keep that stuff in house. And then of course they're few and far between in Youngstown. I hate to keep beating the same drum, but at the level we're paying, it's not feasible to bring somebody in house. So I mean, I can go into more specifics of my areas of expertise, but I'm primarily a litigator and a dispute resolution person. Excuse me.
So with that, Cal, I mean not Cal. Sorry, we keep talking.
That's okay.
Jeff, so with dispute resolution, that's a lot of what our labor issues come down to. And what exactly, if there was a case that you had to handle, can you tell me exactly what that case would be? And I'm all you're saying all of this, but I just want to know what exactly you're doing. We have the outsourcing all of this. It seems as though when you go through this, we are covered and double covered if we're talking about expertise, but how are we picking up the rear, and how can we decrease some of this this money that we're putting out?
Well, I couldn't agree more. Listen, I mean, we can throw stones everywhere, and I can throw a lot of stones at the past administrations for some of the decisions they made that led the city and council down the wrong path. I mean, we had to expend an extraordinary amount of money over the last 2 years to undo the damage done by the previous administration. So I guess what I think that I'm good at is taking my time and making sure that we take the right approach in each case so that we don't get burned either in this administration or in administrations to come. The litigation that we're engaged in right now is largely because of bad decisions in prior administrations.
Jeff, are you just saying then that these outsourced numbers are kind of one-offs for the water and wastewater issue we had? And, once that's settled, our outsourced numbers should never hit this. Normally we just would have that small outsourced number for labor.
Sure. Oh, there's no question about it. Yeah, these outsourced numbers, I think, are an aberration and totally unacceptable. And so no, I agree. I would call them one-offs, and they should not happen again, because I don't. This is not designed to toot the horn of the mayor or the administration, but I don't think we're making those bad decisions so that going forward there's the need to go into court and litigate these matters.
How many? Do you know, like, just a general? This is a weird question. I don't even know if it makes sense, but how many lawsuits outside of, I guess, how many lawsuits have we had in the last year over year? Maybe 2 years, 3 years? Like, do we have 3 a year? Do we have 10 a year? Do we have?
Well, that's a good question. I'm sorry, I'm not armed with the answer, but and I'll get back to your specific question, but that raises another significant point. Kyle and I have been talking for a couple of years when the dust settles to try to rework our insurance coverage with Tokyo Marine. We're required to send everything to Tokyo Marine, and some of these numbers reflect that issue where they get to decide which cases they keep and which cases they get outside counsel for, and which trinkets they throw back to us to say, okay, you can handle that. We can handle the vast majority of them. But our insurance, because it's their money on the line too, they get to decide that, and then we have to, and it galls me every time we settle a case for exactly $50,000 because that's our deductible. So oftentimes the insurance companies make financial decisions just to get the litigation over with. There are times when we should be going to trial with our insurance carrier, but they find that it's more financially lucrative to resolve a case that shouldn't be resolved because we're in it for $50,000, any way you look at it. And that shouldn't be the way a law department gets to make a decision for the city about whether or not litigation should go forward or not. To your specific question, I guess if you're just talking about lawsuits, that, good Lord, any claim can be a lawsuit. There are probably, I'm just throwing a number out here, 25. I'll get you the specific number that we've sent to Tokyo Marine. I mean, when you think about lawsuits in terms of, like, say, the Michael Cox situation, that's extraordinary litigation that comes up. It seems as though we're having more and more grievance issues that you could call litigation, and sometimes people don't take our no for an answer, don't take the civil service no for an answer, and it only takes $200 to file a lawsuit in common pleas court, and then we're off to the races. So, Councilwoman, I'll get you that number. Unfortunately, I don't want to be reckless and give you a specific number, but I'll get that right away.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have any bearing here. It's just
Sure.
kind of a knowledge base or a point for me. But you brought up a point regarding the way that the insurance company handles our lawsuits that I was trying to get to in this meeting previously, before you joined, but where I was wondering if we ever take on a lawsuit from a financial perspective where we say, okay, we've gone so far, spent so much money, it's time for us to settle. Because, maybe we're outsourcing the work and, as the law firm breaks in more money, the further we go along or the longer we go along. Or B, just from a financial standpoint, how much can we extend? How much can we leave ourselves out there? Does financial impact play a part in your decisions to continue or settle from a city perspective?
Absolutely. In every day, in every case, we always consider the financial implications, and without using any names, but it has come up from time to time, litigation, where someone has filed a civil rights action and claims that they're entitled to their job back. We're constantly doing the numbers to see, well, what is the impact of settling this from a financial standpoint, and what is the impact of this on future litigants, precedent setting, and breaking the bank. I mean, all of those factors come into it. Sometimes we feel like we've got to litigate this so that because it's just wrong, that someone has just made an outrageous claim. There have been outrageous claims that I think we've settled because it's just like, oh my Lord, can we risk spending any more money on this than we already have? And I'm guessing you're wondering about litigation that's currently pending. And yeah, I mean, once again, without saying names, we would be fools as lawyers if we didn't tell the administration, tell counsel, have executive sessions about, like, well, here's what we've spent so far. How we know we're right here, but how much money do we want to spend to prove we're right here? And once again, this is important, I think, for any city. What's the precedential value of settling a case for $100,000 just to get out of it. It may be a wise thing. It may be a wise thing in terms of, man, I don't know, there might be enough issues here that we don't want to roll the dice in court. But then what are you saying when you're spending the public's money, that we're spending $100,000 on a BS case just to get rid of it? And hey, other litigants who work for the city or used to work for the city, why don't you file your $200 lawsuit and see if you can get $100 grand or 50 grand? But after having said all that, those are absolutely matters that we consider when we're looking at litigation.
Thank you, Anita.
Through the chair, Jeff, I'm curious about a couple of these positions, so if you could just help me out.
Sure.
First off, with Terry Gringa, she's part-time. She's not receiving benefits. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And on Conchetta, I'm gonna get the last name wrong. And Jones.
Precorato, yeah, Connie Precorato.
Okay.
She's a secretary.
Okay. You have two assistant secretaries and a secretary. What's the difference in their jobs? And did you always have three in that office?
Well, Joni Stewart is actually Joni Stewart and Connie Conchetta were actually both secretaries in the prosecutor's office. And when I looked at the numbers when we came into office and realized that I could be both law director and prosecutor to save money, and because I just didn't think the numbers warranted having a full-time city prosecutor. Plus, I thought it was important that the law department maintain a closer perspective on all things prosecutorial. Because back in the day, just as an aside, back in the day, the law department had no connection with the prosecutor's office, and we worked to change that. So back to your question, both Connie and Joni were secretaries in the prosecutor's office because at a time that was necessary. It became apparent that office could operate with one secretary full time. And so Connie was brought over to be the secretary, one of the secretaries in the law department. Jaleesa replaced she's actually the law director's secretary. And she is working right now.
Your secretary. Then that makes her your secretary.
It does, but because we're trying to be more forward thinking, we're having her work right now with CDA and our office, like with that whole audit thing, to try to be more judicious in our use of funds. So as she works as we speak today, she is housed primarily with Nikki's office, but she is my secretary.
Okay. And Joan, what does she do?
Joan, she's the one who's the secretary at the prosecutor's office.
But I thought that was brought all over to one office.
No, I'm sorry. Maybe I misspoke. Connie was brought over to the law department, and Joan Stewart is in the prosecutor's office in the municipal court building, where the two prosecutors
she's still over
are
there.
housed.
Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty. And Jaleesa, I apologize because I'm sure you already explained it, but I'm still a little bit unclear between Jaleesa, Conchetta, and Deborah. Are they not performing the same jobs?
No. Deborah Bird is strictly the legislative aide. She's the person who does all of the organizing of the legislation that ultimately comes to you. She does all the coordination of all those efforts and types everything, and then also handles all of the books and some of the legal research in our office, the non-lawyer legal research. And then Jaleesa is the secretary who is she filled in when we had to let our our secretary go about 2 years ago. Now I can tell you that what we're trying to do is one of two things: either expand our human resource office, which would necessitate having a legislative aide, and 2 secretaries, and also working on expanding the claims investigator stuff. Because frankly, I think we've been woefully underserved in human resources and claims investigation. We should have a human resources office that handles all human resources for the city. And you see Marty Kane and Terry Shasho on there. They were originally on the, I want to say, 4th or 5th, the 5th floor, but they were always a part of the office. Well, I just thought that was not an efficient use of time, space, or money. So we consolidated them back into our office. And there's more than enough work for the secretaries. Frankly, we could just use some training there as well.
So you say you want to bring in the direct follow-up, Madam Chair, on the HR side, but would be HR that's somehow different? Is it an internal HR dealing with complaints within City Hall, or is we're talking about just human resource like we have when we contracted out to MyCap?
Oh, not the human relations. No.
Okay, I got it then. Okay, so we're talking about the internal resource officer, human resource officer.
Just by way of example, we're working on, turning everything over to a self-insurance program. And when you have 700 employees who are all living their lives, we have run into a big problem with people not, letting us know that, their children are now of age, or they're no longer married, or a spouse has passed away. And we lose considerable money where we have to analyze whether or not we're losing considerable money just because of people forget to tell us things. That's just one example of what a human resource office should be doing. And right now, one person just can't do all that and do all the COVID stuff and do all the life insurance stuff and on and on and on. So right now there is a need, but we're trying to be conservative.
Anita, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, let's follow up. So with as the human resource, and we've been working closer with Marty then?
Well, I'm sorry, if we had a more.
Well, you said Jaleesa, I think you said.
Oh, she's not yet, but no. Actually,
so you say that Marty's workload is
I think broad. Marty's workload is a significant workload for one person, and frankly, there are more things that Marty could be doing and maybe should be doing, but historically that has not happened. But I guess what I'm saying is that we would like to enlarge that work so that the city is more streamlined in terms of human resources. Right now every department kind of does their own thing, and there's no central clearinghouse for documentation, for hiring records, for all that stuff should be in one central location, we believe.
Thank you.
Basha?
Thank you through the chair. Aside of when we're facing litigations and things like that, and Jeff, I know in the beginning you mentioned what everybody's expertise is, but who on staff do we have that would be like most knowledgeable, say, about our city charter or the Ohio Revised Code? So if we as council people have, questions pertaining to those issues, who on staff kind of has the most knowledge on that?
I'd say without doubt, without question, Dana. And that's why, frankly, I think that the council should have a person dedicated, I shouldn't say exclusively, because I don't know that all of you generate enough questions for a full-time lawyer, although, we could certainly have that discussion, but certainly a half-time lawyer would be needed just to give counsel a sense of comfort. So, because listen, I know there are times when the relationship gets strained between counsel and the law department, because I think the sense is that we're not being attentive enough. So I have, in fact, dedicated Dana, and if I haven't made this clear, I apologize, to make sure that she is answering and answerable to any of your questions. Because Dana has been a lawyer with the city exclusively for the last 22 years, she has an extraordinary depth of knowledge in the charter, in the Ohio Revised Code on municipal issues. She's frankly my go-to person for all those things.
Thank you. And just as a direct follow-up, just a comment. I agree, because I think it is a challenging position to have. As law director, you represent both the mayor and council, but being a mayoral appointment, sometimes that just, you know, that's just a sticky, compromising situation sometimes. So I think it would be good for council to have representation.
I know years ago, just by way of an anecdote about this, I think back in the Anna Gillum days, when I was no longer the city law director, I remember several council members coming to me and wanting to hire me as their attorney, you know, sort of council's attorney. And so I'm very sensitive to the issues that you're talking about. Unfortunately, the charter didn't allow for that because the law director in effect represents you. But we have been trying to move to a point, and with your assistance, you know, I would like to see somebody at least 20 hours dedicated to your specific inquiries, needs, and so that your point of view is always heard in the law department.
Samantha?
Thank you, through the chair. So Cal, kind of in that same vein, you laid out everybody's expertise and the problems you're up against when it comes to outside litigation. It seems as though the attorneys are overburdened, and thus they can't even absorb and learn all the things they need to learn in municipal law, under municipal law. So do you still think that it's wise that we have eliminated the prosecutor for the city? And if so, you know, tell me why you think we should continue down this path and how we can be efficient in getting these attorneys that we do have up to speed on taking care of our plethora of issues.
Through the chair, after Kyle's done, I would appreciate an opportunity to address that as well.
I think the question is to you, Jeff. I think Samantha inadvertently called me you, because I'm like,
yes. She mentioned Kyle. Sorry, Samantha, you
Kyle
mentioned Kyle
is like
again.
always up front talking. So I'm sorry. I'm very see your face. I'm sorry. Yeah, just when I say that, just jump in, Kyle.
Sure.
Jeff, see?
Very good. Very good. Well, with all due respect, our problem is not in the prosecutor's office. In fact, I envision, if things continue to go the way they're going, I envision a time where we may only need 2 part-time or 3 part-time prosecutors, and maybe like the other half of the day they would come to the city law department. We made a decision early on, and frankly, I haven't seen anything that would suggest that it was the wrong decision to save money in the city prosecutor's office. We can handle all of the criminal issues that come through. That's not where the sticking point is. The sticking point is on the civil side, because there are so many different facets of law that we have to be up and ready to address. But you know, with the fact that you know, there are now 3 courts, and when I say that, it's 2 judges and 1 magistrate, and the magistrate has a regular docket now that requires a prosecutor oftentimes at the same time. To your point, the only times that it's necessary to have another part-time regular prosecutor is when those 3 courts are operating at the same time, and obviously 2 people can't be in 3 places. But in terms of having a city prosecutor, I don't think we've missed a beat in terms of preparing criminal complaints and having cases ready for bench trials or jury trials or motion hearings in any way. Thank you.
So just a direct follow-up. So Jeff, how does this budget reflect the quest to remedy the situation? Because it seems as though we're just gonna instead of doing 85, we're up to 122 in professional services. So which seems as though we're planning to outsource more. And I want to know how we're planning to be more successful in-house.
Sure.
Next.
Well, next year I'm not being facetious when I'm saying I'm praying to Jesus that we can get those numbers. There's no reason why those professional services numbers should not come down. And look, I understand in the fourth year of a term, no one's interested in talking about, and I think you all collectively made it clear that you weren't interested in changing the salaries of me and I think by virtue of that, any of my assistants. But I would hope respectfully that you'd all take along, whether I continue to be the law director come January or not. I hope that you'll take a look at the documentation that I'll be providing for you with the hopes and expectations that I can convince you that moving the law director up into the high 90s and moving the deputy directors to the high 80s and not having anybody, any lawyers below the 70,000 range as a start. I mean, the fact that we have Kathleen Thompson making $66,000 after nearly 20 years of practicing law, I think is just shameful. So my goal and hope for the city law department, whether I'm here or not, is that you have some highly trained, very agile attorneys who want to stay, and haven't felt defeated by the fact that they're slogging to work every day. That listen, no one has complained to me, but but for the benefits, these lawyers could be making a lot more money elsewhere. So I'm hoping to convince all of you at some point that, having more highly trained lawyers is ultimately cheaper than outsourcing these matters to other attorneys. When you combine that with as Lauren put it, the one and done thing, I really think you're going to see that number come down significantly.
Jeff, have you looked at, I mean, I am the first person to admit that I am not a fan of outsourcing anything ever. I think you do better in-house, but have you looked at a model where we have 1, 2, maybe 3 well-paid lawyers in-house and we outsource everything else?
Frankly, I haven't, and I'd be happy to have you do that. All I know is that our lawyers probably get paid $40 an hour when all is said and done, exclusive of benefits. You start hiring lawyers from outside firms, and they're going to be charging you at a minimum $150 to $300 an hour. And see, that was the problem with that one bit of work that I was telling you about when we were starting the new union issue with the sanitation workers. $17,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. But you had a lawyer from Manchester Bennett and an assistant lawyer working to do the work of the city. I shudder to think what it would cost if we had just a couple lawyers, sort of holding down the fort and outsourcing everything else. I'd be happy to look at anything. I just know lawyers, and I know if lawyers know that they're the only game in town in terms of outsourced lawyers, I think you're looking at a number for professional services in the $500,000 to $1 million range for the kind of work we do.
Yeah, I guess I can't envision a situation where we can afford to keep 7 lawyers on staff at $150,000 a year or more or less.
Sure.
So that it's like stuck between a rock and a hard place, I guess.
Absolutely. I wish there were good answers to this, and frankly there aren't. It's just I think the nature of the beast in the practice of law.
just one final thing, Lauren.
Samantha.
So Jeff, in your words, the plan to begin to get more seasoned and educated attorneys is you'll maybe at some point this year be proposing a wage increase for our law department overall.
Yes, ma'am. I'm working on that now, but the mayor asked me to take a cold hard look at what it would be like to do that, and so I'm giving him, and I'm sure he'll certainly want you to have those numbers as well. But yeah, that's the plan. I mean, I would hope it would happen this year, but I'm suspecting in the nature of a 4-year term, you may want those to, as you've made clear, at least I don't want to put words in your mouth, Councilman Turner, but you see maybe it being a better approach to start at the beginning of a new term, and that makes sense as well.
Through the chair.
Julius.
So, Jeff, just to be clear, you're not saying if your staff was paid more, then they would be better qualified to do the job, and we wouldn't have to outsource. Is that not what you're saying, or?
No, I'm just talking about if we paid the lawyers we had more, and train them to do the very specific tasks that we need them to do, we wouldn't have to worry about them up and leaving like the 4 lawyers I told you about. Lori Shells, we tried to poach from the county prosecutor's office. Kim Akins, we had for a while, but she went on to greener pastures. Miriam Ocasio, has been an outstanding lawyer for years, but there aren't that many Hispanic lawyers in town, and she has the market cornered on representation in that community, and does very well financially, and we couldn't entice her to stay on full time. So it's not like if I'm understanding your point or your question, it's not like, well, these lawyers are sitting around waiting to do a better job when they get more money. No, it's about being able to make sure we continue to train these lawyers and then keep these lawyers. 2 perfect examples, Adam Bente and Jeff Moliterno. If we don't pay them significantly more in the next 4 or 5 years, what would make a Jeff Moliterno or an Adam Bente, 2 young lawyers, to stay with the city and make it a career? They'll go out and make double that in their first year once they get some of the seasoning under their belt. So it's more of a long-term thing when I say to train and then keep good lawyers. It's not a matter of getting new lawyers who are better, but just enticing these lawyers to stay and make it a career and be an effective, efficient office.
I'm sorry, just a follow up. Does the budget reflect, so I understand it doesn't reflect a higher wage for the attorneys, but does it reflect training for them in some of the harder hit areas?
A modest amount of, let me see. Kyle, I forget what we called that, or what you were calling that.
It would be under travel.
Thank you. It's under travel costs. $5,000 is what's budgeted. Dana Lance just signed up for some continuing legal education, and I want to say that was about $400 just for one batch of seminars for one person. So that $5,000 is eaten up pretty quickly, and that's just for the most rudimentary. We call them CLEs, continuing legal education courses. That's not the advanced, highly technical issues. You could pull out any topic, workers' comp, a workers' comp lawyer with, top of the line skills. It would probably be $5,000 a year just to educate that person. So, and I'm just throwing out numbers as an example of how, if you want highly trained, highly specialized lawyers, it costs more than $5,000 to train or continuing legal education for 7 or 8 lawyers.
So Jeff, do you have a training plan based off of our burdens that we've had for 3 or 4 of these attorneys that they need to attend, and 5,000 is all it's costing, or you just have the 5,000 and that's it? Because investing in the attorneys that we have, I'm sure will help them to stay as well. But it seems as though we're really not planning to invest in them. If you're saying that one course could be 5,000, how many are we actually planning to do? Are we planning to train them? Are we hoping? Sorry, Amber Alert. Or are we hoping to train them?
Well, we're training them on a most rudimentary level, to be perfectly blunt. I mean, but we have the, oh, we all got that. We're just cognizant of our budgetary constraints, and so we're doing maybe the better way of putting it is we're doing the best we can with a limited amount of resources. I could come here and ask you for $10,000 in travel, and I would think you would laugh me off the Zoom, because I understand we're not the only department in town.
I think that, I don't know if you've talked to the mayor about this, but we spent 137,000. We are saying that for this budget it's 122. So saying 10,000 or 15,000 is reasonable for training to offset that cost, if that's what you're saying is lacking in the attorneys that we currently have on staff. I don't know if you've pitched this and it just hasn't come, but I don't think we would laugh you off, because we would like to see our attorneys handling these things. And when you're saying that they can't handle it because they are not educated enough on the issues. So if there is a labor seminar or continuing education course, we want our attorneys in them, especially those that have decided to work for us in the city and continue to work for us in the city. So,
Great.
I think that's, I don't know what my colleagues think, but I'd rather see that than to continue year over year to see this high price tag for outsourcing because the attorneys are not seasoned or educated enough.
I couldn't agree more, and I'll be happy to address that again with the mayor, and you will see our new plan very soon. Okay. I mean our new expected plan.
Through the chair.
Julius?
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, that might have been the part that I missed when I was switching devices. I was going to ask you, since the law department is basically underpaid and not equipped to handle cases, I guess from what you just said, you do have a strategic plan, kind of like, what economic development has been doing to restructure the department. You have that same type of plan for the law department?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think we probably can say every department probably thinks they're underpaid, and probably is. And we have the same problem that I'm hearing in the law department and a lot of the other departments, and that's just turnover. We have a hard time keeping employees, and then, the new ones coming in the door need time to get trained. And by the time we get them up to speed, they're on to better paying gigs. And that's not exclusive to the law department, I don't think. All right, any more questions for Jeff on his budget here that we see tonight?
Jeff, I just would like to see when we roll up. Thank you, Lauren. Jeff, and now Cal, I would like to see some consideration put towards training and education for the attorneys. You have 5,000 here, and if that's something that we're lacking, and if there's one area that's burdening us a lot, then I would like to see, an attorney or two get there. And if we have to support that, I don't think it's a heavy lift for us at this point. So if it's 5,000 or if it's 10,000, so that we don't have to spend 30,000 every time, I just really would like to see that considered in our roll up. So please convene with the mayor and see how he can help support that effort.
Very good. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, this is the last item on tonight's agenda. So thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle, for providing all the information for tonight. Our next budget hearing meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 2nd at 4. I think we're going to try and do Tuesday, Thursday next week. This week we have a safety committee pre-scheduled for Thursday, so we skipped it. But we'll definitely get that confirmed and get the agenda out and the proper department heads on the calendar. Is there any final comments before we take a motion to adjourn? Sorry. Okay, I will just take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Can somebody second it?
Second.
Thank you. All right, we are adjourned.